Hello and welcome. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for what's sure to be a great conversation. So, by means of introduction, I am Marcie L. Thomas, the founder of Brown Girl Collective, the BGC Book Club, and then, of course, also your host for Live Well Sister. It's just I had to skip a week last week for a very important reason, which I'll talk about a little later. So I'm super excited to be back with you, and especially the guests that we have this evening, because I was just telling her, well, we've been following each other for a while, and as I read her book, I'm like, wow, I feel like I already know you because we think alike about a lot of different things. So this is sure to be an exciting conversation. So we will be discussing tonight Ride or Die by Shanita Hubbard. And Shanita is an acclaimed writer, adjunct professor of sociology, a Soros Fellow, and recipient of the James Baldwin Writing Residency. Her work has been published in the New York Times, Essence, Huffington Post, The Guardian, Pitchfork, and more. She was featured in the On the Record documentary and is a clinical consultant for therapists. Her greatest accomplishment, however, is being the mom of a dope Black girl. And without any further delay, let's welcome Shanita to the room. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, yes, I am super excited. This is going to be a good conversation. So, just by, of course, I already shared your bio so people can know a little bit about you. So one of the things I saw or I see is that you are a former therapist. So that's interesting.
Yes, I was a therapist for 6 years.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Obviously, there were reasons why you felt like you wanted to transition into something else. And of course, for us, that's a good thing because we all get to get a bit of your healing power through your work. So that's extra special. So, Ride or Die chick. This is something that a lot of us have heard of, a ride or die chick. Some of us may even claim to be a ride or die chick. So, as you were writing this book, or what was it that prompted you actually to write the book and talk more about who the ride or die chick is and who exactly is she to you?
So I remember the day that I knew I wanted to write about this topic. I was actually on my way. At the time, I was a project director in the South Bronx. So I was on my way home actually, I was in a meeting that took me like months to coordinate. You know how it can be really challenging to get, certain people all in the same room together. So it took months to facilitate this meeting to make it happen. And then literally, like, soon as it's about to pop, the meeting's about to start, my phone is going off. And it's my daughter's, her then school at the time, they had an emergency. And, they wasn't going to have after school programs. So all parents had to come pick up the kids. So I'm just like, oh my gosh. So I'm like juggling and having to like leave a meeting. I worked so hard to plan to jet up to Yonkers. And then I remember at the time, Nas came on in the radio, and what used to be one of my favorite songs at the time was One Love, which was his open letter that Nas wrote. It's a song from the 90s, and Nas wrote this open letter to Black men and his friends who are incarcerated in the hood. And I felt like in that song, we were so like either dismissed or ignored, or there's a whole subset of Black women who were impacted by mass incarceration in various ways. And our stories just don't get told, not even just in hip hop, but in our community as a whole. Right. So I'm just like, oh my gosh, juggling these things, but still kind of exhausted. And so then that's where the concept of this whole ride or die, that's when I started to really interrogate the messaging of a ride or die, because I'm like, I have to pick up my child. I'm feeling terrible about having to juggle that work. And, just realizing how long I've been functioning like that with the backdrop of, with hip hop playing in the background and just hearing how we are erased. So around that, so that's when the idea for this book, was born. That's when I started to think about this concept a lot deeper.
And it is something, because as I said, we've heard this term a lot. And if you think about us as Black women, we all are or have been a quote unquote ride or die at some shape, form, or fashion. So just to hear, or to read the book and see how you kind of talk about that through the lens of hip hop.
Yeah, I think, I mean, myself included, a lot of us wore, or some of us still wear, the
Yes.
title as a badge of honor, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's the ride or die chick. It's, supposedly celebrated in the music that we listen to. And who doesn't want to be seen as a woman that's going to show up for people, whether it's her man, her community, her church, her job. But if we unpack the context and the layers of just the song and the idea of a ride or die chick, it's not so much that she shows up for people. It's that she pours out, oftentimes from an empty cup, without expecting reciprocity. And then the most important part of it is that she does this indiscriminately, right? So this is who she is everywhere. Like,
Right.
Regardless of people are doing this for her in return. And that's just not a badge of honor, right? Us operating in this way for so long keeps us from focusing on our own well-being.
Right, right. And because that is so true. One of the things that you talk about, and I know because I've seen it, anyone who's grown up in a Black church or is still in a Black church, I mean, it's fully on display. So it's not just like a hip hop thing of the bad, B who's out here, living that type of lifestyle that oftentimes gets, pushed to the forefront now. But even looking back, in the church, we have been the ride or die for the pastor, for the mission, for all of those sorts of things. I like that you talk about that as well.
Yeah, because there is no separation of church and hood, right?
Right.
Even if you've never stepped foot in your church yourself, the Black church yourself, I'm sure your grandmom has, or her mom has, or your aunties have. So we bring this with us in our community, right? So it's certainly intertwined. And then again, wherever you go, there you are. If you think about the Black church, it's predominantly comprised of Black women, right? So if this is how we are socialized to perform and behave and pour out and do for everyone, the Black church is no exemption from this.
Because one of the things, I think back about us, oftentimes we become that ride or die because oftentimes we don't have a choice or we feel that we don't have a choice because we do have to be the one that wears all the hats and does all of the work for whatever reason. If we don't have a mate, or if our mate, is unable to hold things, help us hold things together, we end up becoming this person. But it's not always positive, put it that way.
And Marcie, I also think, I don't know if it's so much, yes, there's some things that we do out of default, but there's some things that we perform and we do out of conditioning, socializing, right? Because we think that's what we are supposed to do, right? And even when we try to push back sometimes, we don't necessarily always get that type of support. So if you think about it, I remember I was having a conversation with somebody and it was like, well, such and such doesn't have anybody else, so I have to. But I want us to start pushing back on those notions. Why don't they have anybody else? Did they burn all these bridges and that was your turn? Right? Or maybe there's an opportunity to teach them to build up community, right? So that's just, there's something, and we are really socialized to show up for our community, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But a lot of us for too long have done it at the sake of our own health and well-being. And I remember, it's funny, it's interesting that we're talking about, we're starting out this conversation from the Black church. I remember one particular time where there was a season in my life when I was a therapist operating like this with a whole clientele list.
Wow.
So I was, working full time. I was helping in my community. I was like volunteering at my church, and then I would take my days off from work so that I can volunteer even more time at my church. I'm talking about like running job readiness programs, running after school programs, running abstinence programs, helping single moms. Yes, I needed the money, but also helping single moms with like after school care for their children. This was before I became a mom. So I was just functioning like this for like at least a year. And I remember having a conversation with every single day, like my life was booked with like church stuff on top of, work and other activities. And I remember saying, I'm getting really tired. And I'm thinking I was initiating a conversation about some restructuring. Like, what can we do to restructure? And a person responded, you shouldn't be getting physically tired if you're doing a spiritual job. Right. And I wasn't in my place. I wasn't in that place where I would push back a little bit on that. But I have a spirit, but I'm in a physical body, and this physical body gets tired. Right. But that was just the narrative that I was given, and that a lot of people were given at that time, like, keep going, keep going. So it's not so much, it's not that it's only reinforced in church. It's just that it's inescapable for us in some form of fashion, that we always get the girl, you got this, girl, you strong, girl, keep going narrative.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, at church, obviously in our homes, in our romantic relationships, at work,
Mm-hmm.
we are expected to be the first to show up, or a lot of people think that we should be the first to show up and the last to leave, even though we aren't being compensated in the ways that we should be for all of the labor that we're putting forth. So, yeah, the concept of being that ride or die, it shows up in a lot of ways, even if people aren't putting that language to it. It's
Yes.
still the expectation.
And the reason why I say a lot of it is socialization. Is the way a lot of us, too many of us, have internalized this idea that we're supposed to be work mules. Like, I know people without exaggeration that will say with such pride, girl, I ain't took a day off in 5 years. Sis, that's not a brag. That's not good. Those are not bragging rights, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of us, we operate like this. We just internalize this concept, and it's harmful.
Definitely. Well, one thing I will say about myself personally, when I go hard, but I believe every day you're going to give me, I'm going to take it.
Me and you are sisters. I am.
I told you that. If you give me a day, I'm taking it.
I never had no like days or
right. Yeah. No, that's not happening. But yes, because during the pandemic specifically, I was working out of my mom's house for a while, and she would fuss at me because I get in that seat at 7:45, and sometimes be in that seat, exception of bathroom and food breaks, all day till 5:00, 6 o'clock, and she would fuss about that. I was like, but yes, I might be doing this, but trust me, I'm gonna be off on this weekend. If I got a vacation day, I'm gonna take it. So yeah, that's just something. Because what I did not say as I read the title of the book, the subtitle is a feminist manifesto for the well-being of Black women. So all of this is about how we can move beyond some of the things that others may expect of us and find our own space of being well. So that is where this kind of conversation kind of stems from. The next is broken down into 6 different parts and 6 different chapters. And the next one talks about the corners, which for me, that was just real deep, just reading about the corners. Now, give us a little background. There's a particular song that goes along with this one as well, and just what you mean by the concept of the corners.
So for those who haven't had an opportunity to read it, so each chapter I use like a specific hip hop song just as the backdrop, and it's not necessarily simply deconstructing the song itself, but more of like the societal factors that the song touches on. And the song "The Corners" by Common, I love Common, like he's one of my faves. I love this song, but in this particular song, he's talking about a universal experience that Black men across America experience, whether you're in Brooklyn or the Midwest. He's talking about a type of what happens on the corners for our Black men. And there's one part in a hook, and they're like, the corners is our magic, it's our space, it's our politics, right? So they talk about this camaraderie and this brotherhood that they're experiencing. And then he's very candid about what's happening. He's talking about the police snatching people off the corners, and he's talking about as he said, quote unquote, talking straightforward to hoes. And he's really giving a depiction of what the corners look like in the hood. But there was one narrative that was kind of left out of it. It's so interesting because I remember seeing the video for the corners, and there's one scene where there's some girls who are about 12 years old, right? And they're leaving school, and it looks like they're, school's dismissed, and they're walking out, and literally as soon as they're about to turn away, like you could just see them walking out of school. You don't see them walking down the corners. The camera leaves. And that is kind of what the song does to Black girls, right? Our story isn't there. Our story isn't told at all about in that song, because our story about what we endure on those corners aren't always talked about. So it's less about Common and more about let's shine light on what young Black girls are going through on these corners, right? Because these are spaces in our communities that are unavoidable. And I took the readers back to the days where I was about 12 or 13 and really developed for young girls and walking by these corners with these men who were talking straightforward to hoes, right? And I'm just talking about like my experiences. For a lot of us, It was on these corners with these people that are from our own neighborhoods. They knew us, right? They knew our brothers, cousins, uncle. That they watched us grow up. But for a lot of us, this was our first encounter with sexual violence. We just didn't have the language to call it that, right? When you're walking by and somebody's grabbing your ass and talking about what they're gonna do to your young body, and we just start shrinking ourselves, or just become something else that we normalize, or just like maybe you snap back and then you just kind of learn to start becoming more aggressive. So there are a lot of elements that we have to unlearn, things that we did learn on that corners that I want us to like talk about more openly. And one of the reasons why I spotlighted that is because these conversations, like going back to the song with Common, a lot of the topics that he talks about, talking about brothers getting snatched by police on those corners, which is true, right? And then he's showing the visuals to that. What happens is that keeps these type of topics on the front brains in our community, right? Even if you live in the suburbs, right, you are familiar with this, like you're constantly hearing this, you get this. So it's really important that we incorporate the narratives of young Black girls about what we experience, so that we can have these open dialogues, so we can figure out how to make safer spaces for our girls.
Yeah, and that's just so powerful. So many things are going through my mind as I read it, and just, listening to you talk about it, being a young Black girl walking down the street, 12, 13, can possibly even be younger than that, and maybe be developed, and having people who are pedophiles or just, ignorant, saying things. And I won't get into all of what your experience was, because people need to read it. But just understanding that is a time when people are being sexually harassed, in some cases sexually assaulted. And it's just true. And it doesn't matter how old you are. It might start when you're a young girl, but I have friends that are 40 that have talked about street harassment. I'm not ashamed to say my age. I am 56, but I can walk down certain streets in certain areas and people see, a big button, a smile. They're gonna say something about it. But it is a form of harassment. It is something that would make us as women feel unsafe to be in certain areas and certain spaces. But one of the other things you talk about, yes, it's those, those boys in the hood or men in the hood that are hanging out, but then it's also things that put us at risk with even police, because we always talk about what happens with men and police, but women deal with issues with police as well.
And that was definitely something I wanted to note in the corners, because when we talk about police violence, of course, we rightfully talk about the harm that Black and brown boys, boys and men experience at the hand of police, but we can't get left out of that narrative. Unfortunately, we're not left. We might be left out of the narrative, but we sure are not left out of the statistics, right? Because there were so many cases of police violating young Black girls in these same communities and these same corners. In addition to the data that's in my book, I remember reading like America Goddamn by, oh my gosh, Trevor, I can't remember her last name, but she really runs the data on that as well. So if you think about this in the terms of the experiences of young Black girls, and we're not safe in our communities, right? We're not safe from things like street harassment, sexual violence, even those of us as young as 12. And when they go into school, the data shows that Black girls are disproportionately suspended at higher rates in comparison to white girls. It's called pushed out, the adultification of Black girls. So if we're not safe in our communities, we're not safe in our schools, we need to have more conversations about this.
Absolutely. And we have a comment coming in from Rachel. Powerful discourse and conversation, especially for girls and boys 9 to 16 years. Enjoying and feeling this. Respect is neutral. Thank you. Yes, thank you for chiming in. We appreciate that. And it is important because, yes, this book does focus on, women and girls, but the reality of it is, you don't really touch on this as much in the book, but it is a thing of what we as women who are raising children of both genders, of all genders, what things are we teaching them so they know, don't be that person. Don't be that guy that's on the corner harassing the girls that walk by.
Absolutely. I think, oh my gosh, I remember I saw this like there was this article that I saw floating around on social media, right? And it was like there's some school, and then there was a huge sign in the hallway of the school, and it said something along the lines of, "Girls, if you want boys to respect you, dress better." And I saw people like, "Oh, that's wonderful, baby." I would walk in that school and leave with somebody's head. Like, you are not going to put the onus to get respect on a little girl. We're going to raise our sons with how to treat girls. We're not going to do this to our young girls anymore. This stops here. I was like, I cannot believe this is being celebrated.
That is so true. And that's going to make me skip ahead. I'm going to skip over and come back. Because that actually gets into some of what you talk about in the chapter, that thing you do, and how we have to define ourselves, and how others will try to define us based upon things like the way that we dress or the way that we wear our hair and things like that. So talk a little bit about, what's included in that particular chapter.
So in that chapter, it's funny because it's like I love Lauren. We love Lauren. Black women, we love Lauren, right? So I was just like, I'm gonna tell the truth about this. We need to revisit our sister Lauren, like some of these, messaging that she was putting out. But I also, full disclosure, the chapter is called Doo-Wop. So I invite the readers in to meet young, what was I, like 19-year-old Shanita, like when I was in college. And that album came out, and I love Lauren, but it resonated with me so deeply because she spoke to a part of me that needed to other women so that I could feel better about myself, right? So when Lauren would say things like, hair done by the Europeans, nails done by Koreans, like, what do you, like, showing off your ass because you think it's a trend, like, what do you expect that this man, and talking about in that song Doo-Wop, what do you expect? This man didn't call you back, you gave it up too easily, like, really. And at the time, young Shanita was like, absolutely, honey, you're supposed to be natural. If you Black girl magic, you're supposed to not having your nails done, and if you give it up easily, then that gives permission to a man to mistreat you, and God forbid you should expect anything else, like honesty, right? So there was a narrative that she was like singing over a dope beat that spoke absolutely to where I was at the time. Like, if you think she's really, there needs to be an other, right, for Lauren to shine in that, right? And the other are the women that go to the clubs, the women that have relaxed hair, the women that aren't as sexually conservative, right? So we celebrated Lauren as she othered those other women, and I'm actually pushing back on that as an adult to say, no, like, if you need to other somebody else, we're gonna check you, sis. Like, if you need to do that, right? And then so that chapter is about, like, not just solidarity, but really unpacking this need for, to other women. And I remember at the time there was like titles like, yeah, Lauren's a queen, because this is what it means to be a queen. This is what it means to be a Black queen. I am not opposed to the title of Black queen. Queen's a dope, right? Who doesn't want to be called a queen or considered queen? However, I want us to be more inclusive in how we're using that term, right? Because a lot of times we're using like, oh, that's dope. She's in school, she's getting her degree. Marcie got, she's running her own business, she's killing it. She a Black queen, and you are. But so is that woman who lives in a project with 3 kids, who's working 2 jobs, and home at night and studying with her kids and making sure her kids have joy and going out in the morning putting Vaseline on her face. Is she not a queen too, right? So I also want us to like expand this definition so that we are being more inclusive on how we are celebrating all different forms of Black womanhood.
And that is so powerful because we all have done it in some shape, form, or fashion. We'll say, oh, she wore that dress, so she's not this, or, or I'm wearing, whatever, it's in the way that we wear our hair, it's in the way that we dress, it's in the fact that, like you said, somebody's got an education and driving a fancy car versus somebody who might be, holding down a job at the corner store. We're all equally royal in our own way. And that this whole thing of othering other women, that doesn't mean everybody's going to be your home girl and everybody's going to be your buddy, because the reality of it is we do all have different personalities and different likes and dislikes and all those sorts of things. But when it gets to a point where it's like me over here and I'm good and you over there and you're bad, that's problematic.
Absolutely. And especially, and I love that we have gotten away from this. But I remember when I was younger, there was such this almost like this line drawn in the sand. And I used to do it too. I'm guilty of it too. Like if she's natural, she's conscious, she's smart, she's this. Like, if you have a relaxer, this means A, B, C, D about you, right? So it's just kind of like we place these labels on each other that are just unnecessary. We have so many things to contend with. We don't need to be that one more thing for each other. I don't care if sis got on an ankh or in locks, or she got straight hair and whatever, and just throwing her ass in the club. Like, you get to be as free as you want to be, Black grown woman, without my judgment.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Absolutely. But the thing about it is, some of what you're saying, remembering that, of course, depending on when you grew up, and of course, you're talking a lot about hip hop. And I'm being honest, some of the songs that are in the book I knew, and some of them I didn't, because I'm old school hip hop. So I was into hip hop really when, it was first getting started, and it was all about a party and a good time and all of that, funking you up and, all that kind of stuff. That's my hip hop, MC Light, just different people like that. So as hip hop shifted, I found myself not listening to it as much because of the shift, because for me, it did feel a lot more negative and not so much about fun and party. Negative and materialistic. So at a certain point, I kind of didn't listen to it as much. But it's just interesting, the whole thing of you saying that your generation is like, oh, if you're natural, you're a down sister, you're a queen, whatever. But there was another point in time when I was coming up where natural wasn't, well, that's not true. When I was a little girl, natural was the thing. But then we went through a phase where natural was not the thing, so, and then things, shifted. So now it's like, yes, people want to be natural. Well, not everyone, of course, but there are a lot more people who are showing up as natural. But yeah, like you said, whether it's the weave or whether it's blonde, I know a lot of people don't like that, but whatever it is you want to be or do, it doesn't negate from who you are as a person.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to back up a little bit, talk about WAP. See, they all kind of run together. But because we were talking about the girls in the clothes, I had to skip ahead. But WAP. Now, some of you know what WAP is.
Go ahead and explain it to them in case they don't.
Some of you may not. It was a song that was out a couple of years ago. Now, I want to say it was during the pandemic, I think, that it came out. But that helped it to get more eyes because people were sitting at home and didn't have a lot else to do. But WAP pertains to wet ass P, starts with a P, ends with a Y. And that song was by Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B, that was out, and just a lot of things and dialogue about what they were talking about in that. So I want to hear your take from what you share in the book.
Okay. Are you Team Jenny or Team Shanita?
I am Team more Shanita. Mm-hmm.
So for those who haven't read the book yet, so WAP, the chapter about WAP is obviously about sexual expression, the politicization of the Black women's bodies. We're talking about sex and all that good stuff. So I wanted different perspectives represented, and my best friend, she feels very differently about WAP than I do. So we had that dialogue. I am definitely Team WAP. She's definitely Team. She hates the song, right? But for me, it's not even a song that's like on my playlist that I'm gonna listen to on a regular, if at all. But I appreciate that it exists, right? They are young, grown ass women expressing what they like and what they want to do sexually. Hell, freaking Cardi's married. So she's talking about what she likes to do with her husband. So my position is that is absolutely these grown women's business. As a matter of fact, I love the idea that they have such agency over their bodies and they are free enough to say what I like, what they like and what they don't like. Because the reality is a lot of us are not, right? A lot of us don't know what turns us on sexually or otherwise because back to socialization, we've been conditioned to think sex is something we simply do for our man, to please him, to keep him or whatever. So our orgasms are secondary. God forbid you should pleasure yourself and figure out what you're into. Some of us don't discover this until later. Like always grown up hearing that women reach their sexual peaks at 40. I don't know if that's biological or is it after once you start, the closer you get to 40, you have 2 F's to give. You just don't give a damn. I don't know which one it is. But I have a deeper appreciation for emphasis on grown women, because these aren't 15-year-olds singing a song.
Right.
Grown women talking about, it's about sexual agency and what they want to do with their bodies with other consenting adults. And I'm with it, right? So my friend has an alternative perspective. She's just, I'm trying to remember who was Jenny's, but no, she just felt like, it's degrading for us. So that was her position, especially considering, how Black women's bodies are completely over-sexualized. She felt like it was degrading. So there's both perspectives. So we had this dialogue like in the book. So I think I closed out each chapter. I wanted to do like a definitive little takeaway with it, right? And my takeaway is be authentically, genuinely honest about who you are, right? Because there's some women that will wear turtleneck in June because, all year round and never go to a club. They want to, stay home and just, has probably been haven't had sex for the last 74 years because, you don't want to be seen like those other girls, and she's doing it because she wanted to get chosen. So even that, sis, I would say interrogate your own actions. Like, are you doing this because that's how you genuinely want to live? Or were you socializing to believe in this is what a good woman does? And in that case, then most of your actions are performative and you're not being genuine with yourself. And then even the others, those who are talking about, I like to throw my ass in the club, shout out to Team WAP and all this other stuff. Are you doing this because you want to please and satisfy? Right. Are you performing for the male gaze? Are you performing for this type of attention, right? Honestly, let us all mind our own WAP and interrogate our own thoughts and stand 10 toes down in that.
Well, I appreciate that, because yes, from the perspective of being a grown woman who does grown woman things, yes, we should be free to express who we are. Now, of course, at the same time that this was all going on, there was the whole discourse of, but the kids. I'm like, well, yes, that was a song that wasn't made for children. We do understand that. And so that can get to be a little bit tricky sometimes because you don't, how can I say, you don't want your little 9-year-old to say, I want to grow up and, whatever. XYZ. I'm gonna grow up to be whatever. You don't want to hear that from your child.
I have a 12-year-old child, right? And I cannot censor her. There's rated R movies out there. There's rated G movies and there's rated G. I do my best to put filters on and make sure that when we're going to watch rated PG movies. I'm not fighting and saying, why do rated R movies exist when I have a child? Because you have a child. You supervise and monitor what you want your child to do. You cannot supervise what studio productions put out. It's like trying to push back the beach. That's going to the beach with a broom to I'm going to push this ocean back. Baby, you can't control that. You can control what you can control as a parent in your house.
Absolutely. And that's actually a good segue into another comment that we got. Don't forget, before the queen, there is a princess that needs nurturing and developing. The princess remains a part of you. That is so true. That is so true. And just a little sidebar. Actually, I have had people ask me, why do I call my platform Brown Girl Collective? The brown is the fact that you see brown when you look at me. Yes, we know our race is called Black, but my skin is brown. So that's the brown. But the girl is the fact that there's always that girl that lives inside of us. There's always that princess that's inside of us. And a lot of times we do need healing. We do need to push past all of these things that are going on around us. So that's where the girl, it's not to diminish us, to say that, like some people, gal, that's a whole nother story. Not that kind of thing. But girl, from the perspective of that there's always a little girl that's inside of us that needs love, that needs healing, that needs nurturing. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. I do. I love that because this is also a reason why I said we're going to defund this ride or die industrial complex, because I want us to have soft lives, right? I don't want us to be the mules of the world. I want us to be protected. I want us to be nurtured, right? I want us to nurture ourselves. I want our community to nurture us. I want our partners to nurture us. Like, I want us to have these soft lives. And if we continue to internalize this notion that we are the mules of the world, that our job is to save everyone else, you don't, get that protection. One of the things I talk about in the book is that I remember growing up, right? If you grew up like in the 90s or whatever, you know the term endangered black man, right? Protecting endangered black man. And I am not saying our brothers are not worthy of protection, because they absolutely are.
Right.
They're worthy of our protection, right? So when you hear words like protect, that signals for us to the community to kind of like gather around them. So labels matter, right? So what you call us matter. If you say we need to protect these endangered black men, and you expecting us to be the strong black woman, who do you think the community shows up to support? Those are endangered or the strong one, right? And I want us to dispel all of that. Yes, protect our brothers, but we deserve and need and want protection too.
Right, because the thing about that is, Shanita, is like, if we're doing all the protection of them, who is really protecting us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who's looking out for us?
Mm-hmm.
And that shows up, so much. We see it when different things happen in the world, and it makes its way to Black Twitter or social media and all that sort of thing. The Black women aren't always protected. If anything, there's a lot of projection and what looks to be like hatred against us, even though we're always, we're quick, to grab our sons or start a march or start a movement or, do whatever to stand for the boys and the men. But we don't oftentimes see that reflected. It doesn't come back to us.
And it's also us too. Can I say all the time, I'm going to keep it all the way honest with you. I wasn't radicalized around social justice because I read about disproportionate mortality rates that Black women are dying during childbirth. I wasn't radicalized because I read, oh my gosh, Black women have more fibroids than damn it, everyone. Why is this happening? Where's the data? Wait, there is no data? Hey, that's the problem. I was radicalized because I learned that, the criminal justice system in part harms our brothers. And I want to jump in to kind of rescue them. Forget, how they, harm Black women. But a lot of us, even those of us who are much younger than me, jumped in this fight when cell phone cameras started recording police shooting down Black men and Black boys. These are the things that radicalize, right? Because we are inclined to protect our brothers. And that is dope, right? But I also want us to start showing up for each other. I remember I was heartbroken, like the first time I ever went to, I don't know if it was Rakia Boyd, but it was a protest for a Black woman, and baby, it was crickets. I'm like, what is this? She was shot by police. And this is why Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw started her movement, hashtag say her name, right? To bring attention to police violence against women. And it's not that we're only trying to bring our brothers to see this. Some of us are not even showing up for us, for ourselves or for our sisters.
Wow, that is disheartening. But I don't know. As you say that, I know you don't have the answers. I don't have all the answers, but it just makes me wonder, why is that? Why is it that we don't always even stand up for each other? What is that? Is it a crabs in a barrel mentality? Is it, lack? Because, maybe we're out here looking for men and we feel like there's not enough going around, so we got to fight each other because we want to get, I don't understand.
I don't know. I don't think we're exempt from a scarcity mentality, right? Because that's what you're referencing. But I also think it is socialization in terms of how we have been, we view ourselves as a strong one. Like, you ever read those memes? It's like, no one ever checks on a strong friend. We're the strong friend. We're not checking on each other. We're not expecting people to check on us because we got it, right? We were raised by generations of these strong Black women. And we have been told for generations that this is a badge of honor, right? So who's going to check on a person that's so strong? She got it. And then, of course, whether it's by default or conditioning, we are highly capable. So it's not even so much that it's like a crabs in a barrel. It's just like, you killing, you got it, sis. You killing it. I see you.
Yeah. That's just something for us to think about and make sure that we are, supporting one another, and even if not in tangible ways, just like you said, you got this. I'm put it this way: I might not have to help you, but I'm surely not going to do anything to hurt you, so to speak. So, but that brings up my sister's keeper, and this is about embracing all women. So, talk a little bit about that particular chapter and what you mean by being my sister's keeper.
I love that chapter. So it is Probably because I have to, I mean, I'm vulnerable in all the chapters, but I'm like, I feel like I was especially vulnerable there. So my sister's keeper is talking about our relationship with Black queer women, right? And if you look at the data and even anecdotally, like we are not cisgender hetero Black women are not the ones doing physical violence to Black, to queer women. Like we're not the ones out there killing killing trans women. We're not like gay bashing. We're not out there throwing blows. So a lot of times the bar is so low because this is what our queer sisters are enduring that we're not really discussing and unpacking the type of harm that we cause in terms of like microaggressions. If all of us, if any Black woman on this call can really, they understand what a microaggression is. If you have a job, right? If you work with white people in corporate America, you understand that there is nothing micro about aggressions, right? So we get how it happens, but we don't check, or sometimes we don't even see it when we are the ones like doing this to our Black and brown queer sisters. And I remember telling the story about what that looked like for me in terms of sometimes we just erased out their identity, right? In terms of like not even just, I don't even see you as like gay. You just like another Black woman. Like you, sis, you just erased.
You still are a Black woman,
right? You just like erased the whole part of her identity. And not only that, like I remember, like I was sharing the story, and when I'm sitting here out to lunch with one of my gay friends. And she's like joking on me about my celebrity crush. And she was like, oh, he has a boyfriend. And I was just like, oh my gosh, what a waste of, if that's true, what a waste of DICK. Like I'm saying this to her as if, that he's a waste of he's just a complete waste of the man if he is not, straight. So what message is that sending to her? Right. And I'm sitting here just nonchalantly saying this. So, and then we end up later revisiting that conversation and unpacking it. So this whole chapter about my sister's keeper is about us showing up for each other, like just in the small ways and the big ways. And and that chapter is important to me because a lot of times, if I'm always like, if you're a Black woman or just a Black person, like let's say you're at your job in 2020, right? I always say that they call it the year of like racial reckoning, and I call it the year that white people acknowledge that racism was real, right? A lot of us on our jobs, people was probably turning to us like, oh my gosh, is it that bad? So now you're in a position where you have to protect your own peace, explain to these people how they are harmful, contextualize the world around them, and do this professionally. It's exhausting. I wanted to explain this concept of, causing harm, non-physical harm to our queer sisters for them without them having to, because I want to offset the possibility that they're constantly in that position of explaining why some of our behavior is harmful, contextualizing that, and then God forbid they raise their voices and offend us. So I really wanted to do some heavy lifting for our queer sisters in that chapter. Like, let's show up for them better. Let's be better. Let's interrogate our own actions, like for real.
Mm-hmm. And that's true because it's things that you really don't even think about a lot of times because we tend to operate in our own bubble, thinking what we think, what we believe, what we feel, how we operate, how we move is, that's the way. And when you're in a situation with someone who may do things differently, a lot of times you don't think about the things that you're saying, whether it's that, or I'll give you another example. It doesn't have to do with sexuality, but I have been in spaces lately where everybody assumes that everybody in the room is a Christian. Everybody, just because you're Black doesn't mean you're a Christian. Mm-hmm. So, I'm making a point to try to use language in spaces like that is inclusive, knowing that everybody's not the same. And just to be mindful of that, when we're dealing with our queer sisters, or having conversations with them about their relationships or whatever. You don't got to get all down and dirty with it. I mean, should you really be doing that past a certain age anyway? But, just to talk to them and, have those real conversations.
No, I love the way because the concept of like heteronormity, like my daughter texts me on that all the time. Like the way you just assume everyone is heterosexual, right? That means like you just assume that, right? Because I remember like sometimes I'm talking to my daughter and I'm just like, go see if her mom or her dad gonna drop her off. Like who's to say she has a mom and a dad? So my daughter will push back and be like, their parents? I don't know, like, because some people have two dads, some people have, two moms, families look differently. And I'm like, you're right. Like, what does that say? Like, we continue on some level, we continue to marginalize other marginalized groups when we operate with this sense of like heteronormality, as if this is just the norm. And there's no, it's just one man, one woman, and that's what it is. So yeah, I love that you brought that example.
Mm-hmm. And I know my best friend is in the room because she left a comment earlier, but one of the things that she always says when we have these types of conversations is that, hey, if they're coming for them, ultimately it's going to circle back to you. So, just to think about the fact that when we're trying to put other people in a box or trying to diminish other people or, have negative things to say, whatever it is that we're doing that's not helpful, understand that has a way of circling its way back, because hell, as a Black person, it's already been here with us. Let's just be real. And it hasn't gone away. We just might not be the forefront in certain conversations right now, but trust and believe it's going to come back around. So to have a level of empathy and compassion for others, understanding that we are all fighting some sort of battle, and we do better when we stand together than when we're fighting amongst each other.
There you go. That's it right there.
Mm-hmm. So the very last chapter, you talk about healing. So I'm going to let you take that over, because that's the end of the book, and you kind of get into what the process of healing, which is really what this whole book is about, finding ways for us to heal.
Yeah, gosh. So yeah, I was telling this story about how a lot of times it's easy for me to hide in public very unhealed and still get celebrated for a lot of these things, to get celebrated for the things that are killing me because people don't know. I don't know if anyone has ever experienced like a season of brokenness. You understand that being broke is expensive. You understand that because credit card fees and interest rates, and then your credit is terrible, so you got to get a jacked up interest rate on a bad card, and your car notes is crazy. So I went through like a season where I was like really broke and struggling because I like unexpectedly lost a job. But I'm not talking about like, oh, I have to fly coach type broke. I'm talking about Hulu and Netflix hit at the same time, and I forgot, and now I got to figure out gas money broke. So because of that, and then we talk a lot about if you grew up poor. A lot of us are unashamed about that, right? Because at the end of the day, that's not really a reflection on us. That's a reflection on whoever raised us. So we'll talk about, how we grew up poor, and this is like started from the bottom, now we're here, but we don't talk enough about like open season of like, now I was a grown adult, went to college, had a master's degree, lost a job, and then boom, I was broke. Like it was like really effed up out here for me. So because I had worked so hard to dig myself out of that hole, I was like, had like this, it was PTSD. It was PTSD / post-traumatic broke disorder. Like it was so hard for me, Marcie, to say no. I was working like crazy. Like I'm writing for the Huffington Post. I'm writing for the New York Times. I'm writing for Essence. I'm doing speaking gigs here. I'm teaching here. And people are like, I see you, sis, you killing it. Because on the outside, it looks like I'm hot in these streets. But what was really happening was I was so afraid to say no to anything because I felt like the calls would stop coming. And if the calls would stop coming, I'll be broke again. So I'm working myself to exhaustion, and then getting celebrated for it. Not that it's wrong to celebrate each other, right? That's dope. Be happy that you see me getting opportunities. But people didn't know what was behind this increased, insane, I'm just going to be like this power. That wasn't the ambition. That was fear. Right. It was never good to be led by fear. That was because, that season still had me in a chokehold. I mean, it was like bad. I remember, years ago, it's been years since I had my car repossessed. But to this day, if I hear like a big truck or beep, beep, I'm like, I'll go check my truck.
Check my account. Did I make
it? So we live with this. So I remember just operating like that. And then it's eating me up on the inside because I'm exhausted. I don't have any peace. And then at the end of the day, I felt like I'm tired. Like I felt like I was walking on a tightrope, just like, and then just still kind of keep going because I was afraid that the opportunities would stop coming. I was afraid that there would be a day that I would go through this. So this chapter about healing is like how easy it is for some of us to hide in public, hide some of our afflictions in public when those things are celebrated in our culture. And Black women are celebrated for being hard workers, right? She's a hard worker, strong, ambitious Black woman, right? So some of these things are not just ambition. Some of these things are peeling back layers because we're running from something. For me, it was running from, I never want to be experiences again, right? So I talked about what it means to heal from that. And of course, I'm a big fan of therapy, but I'm also a big fan of accountability and interrogating my own actions. And I just want to give you an example of that. So I'm pretty sure a lot of you don't know this. So my book came out November 8th, and I was really excited. I was on top of the moon. And then right after that, my grandmother and my aunt passed away, back to back. Like, it was crazy. Like, literally next day after my grandmother's funeral, we got the call that my aunt died. So I spent the holiday season grieving, and it was just like really crazy. And then my family and I went away because none of us were ready to spend Christmas, at Nanny's house. So we all rented a house and we went away. So I came back, and then the day after Christmas, and my freaking pipes burst in my house. I'm a first time homeowner, so that's just so to me it felt like Niagara Falls was falling out my kitchen. So mind you, I'm just like, I'm already grieving. This is crazy. This is a mess, and I was supposed to be on the road like the following weeks to start like book tour and book promo and stuff. So here I was, like, I had to make some tough decisions, right? And like, I had ticketed events. People were selling you tickets for this event, and I was supposed to be there. And of course, there's still a piece of me, because I didn't completely kill it, but I definitely reconciled with the interrogated. There's a piece of me that, like, I can't cancel anything. The opportunities won't be here later, right? I have to do my book, right? And I have to do this. So I tried to keep going, but I was like, I can't. I was like, I cannot. I had to make the tough call and be like, listen, I do not have the capacity to pour out. I am healing, grieving, and quite literally restoring the roof over my head. So, and I was like, what's for me is for me, but most importantly, I have to take care of me. But that took me a really long time to get to that place, because once in my life, I would have tried to figure it out and make it all happen. And I remember speaking to somebody about, when I was like, damn, I'm going to have to excel in tickets to these big events. And I can't, it's a lot, right? And then you're a first time author. You have a dream of kind of like going out on tour and doing all of this stuff. So someone said to me, well, what would your nanny want you to do? What would your grandmother want you to do? I said, and in that moment, that's when I realized some things need to stay buried with our elders. Because my grandmother would have been like, you strong, you got this, keep going. She's the archetype of the strong Black woman. I'm like, no, Nanny would have wanted me to keep going, but we're going to bury that with her. I'm going to stop. I'm going to rest, and I'm going to heal, right? So we talking about, like, so part of healing is understanding what afflicts you. So I'm honest and I'm candid, because I want people to interrogate their own actions, right? The sister that's like, I ain't took a day off in 5 years, or, like, oh, she's killing the game, she's working nonstop and whatever. Like, really, let's interrogate those actions and figure out what's really driving us, and begin to heal. Like, heal in community, heal in therapy, heal. The first step of healing is like openly acknowledging, like, hey, this is an issue, right? And I want that for us.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing it. I offer my condolences to you, because I know that it's a big thing when you lose people that, are a significant part of your life. So I definitely send love and prayers to you in that regard, and give you kudos for saying no. Give you kudos for, just laying things aside for a moment, because you're right. There are a lot of people who would push through and press through and probably break down along the way because they didn't listen to what they needed, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and press through, and then end up, the result not being what they wanted to be. Because trust and believe, sis, you got good stuff. So people going to be waiting on you.
Thank you.
They will wait for you. They're going to be there. Those opportunities are going to come. And the people who reject you, they weren't your people anyway. So that's just the thing. You have to, keep that in mind. But woo, this was a good one. I really enjoyed. They're all good, but I really enjoyed this one, because as I was reading your book, I'm like, ooh, yeah, I feel that way about this and this way about that. I could really relate to a lot of the things that you were talking about. Now, of course, this is your first book, and you are on tour or doing virtual tours, or what's going on, so that people can
I'm in a better place now, so I'm able to go back out. So March. I'm going to be going to Virginia. So far, LA, Virginia, Maryland, and like a few other places. So I'm slowly dipping my feet back in, as much as I can, and definitely more like virtual stuff.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Now, I know a lot of times some people are writers, but when they're promoting one, they're already working on another. Is that the case for you?
Marcie, did my agent send you? Because he is like, what's next? What we doing next? I feel like he's like, y'all double teaming me. I don't know what's next yet. Like, I don't know what's next yet. And ideally, people typically are. I'm just not there yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's fine because sometimes, actually, it was somebody that I had on a couple of weeks ago, Oludara. Actually, her book is right here. She was on a couple of weeks ago. Affirmations for Black Women, Oludara Adio, who she wrote this book, came out like the last week of the year, and then her other book, Self Care for Black Women, was out earlier last year.
I need that. I'm gonna
Yeah, she's got them too. So yes, this one is really. I know this isn't her night, but to show you, it has affirmations. It's like 100 affirmations in here, and then for each affirmation, there's a place to like write what you feel about the affirmation to kind of let it sink in that you're not just saying it, but you're also writing it out. But I saw she posted on social media like a couple days ago how I'm out here telling everybody else to self-care and affirmations, all this stuff, and she got burnt out. That she just had to go somewhere and sit down. So, I think that's a thing that when we do something, it's like we don't take the time to just kind of woosah and celebrate, rah, have a party, whatever. We do it like for 5 seconds and then we're on to the next. So
I actually had to tell somebody because like at my book launch event, people were like, what's next? What's next? I said, I feel like I just had a baby. They stitching me up and y'all asked me about the next one. Can I enjoy this one for a minute? Can I heal?
That's a good analogy. Like, hey, what? Not right now. Yeah, I still got sleepless nights and whatnot. I'm not trying to start. But I do thank you so much for being here with me tonight, Shanita. I consider you a new friend if that's okay with you. So, we can stay in touch and continue to have these great conversations. So I'm gonna let you go because I know you said something about dinner and I probably interrupted your dinner. So I'm gonna let you go back to that, and then I'm just gonna share a couple of things with the audience. So if you want to hang in the background, that's fine. But otherwise, if you want to, you can go ahead and go. Yeah, go finish cooking so you can feed yourself and your baby. So you have a good one, and thanks again for being here. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining this conversation. I had so much fun talking to Shanita. And as I mentioned, I love reading her book, talking a little bit about hip hop and just a lot of things that are important to us as women, as we're going to be healthy, as we're going to, learn how to not just be healthy in our physical, but mental and, just healing our communities overall. And along those lines, I know some of you all, you've heard me mention a couple times about me taking on something new, or, I started the beginning of the year and then was gone for a couple of weeks. The reason being is that in line with healing, I recently was hired with Girl Trek. I have a position with Girl Trek. If you're not familiar with Girl Trek, it is the largest national nonprofit that serves Black women's health. And we focus on starting with walking, but then there are a whole lot of other things that we encourage women to do for the purpose of healing. So, as I continue to do these Live Well Sister shows, you'll hear a lot more about Girl Trek and some of our programming, on my social. I'll share out some of the things that we're doing because I just feel it's important for us to come together to do the things that we need to do for ourselves individually in terms of our health, but also to have a community. And Girl Trek is a community of 1.4 million Black women who are believers in walking and caring for their health. So that's what I've been up to. There'll be a lot more to come about that as we move forward. Now, in terms of next week, I'm actually going to have a double dose of people on the show. Actually, they are two people who have been here before, but coming back in a different form. And that is Tina McElroy Ansa and Wanda S. Lloyd. Their book is Meeting at the Table that came out last year. They co-edited the book together. But even more important than the book that they wrote together, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about sisterhood and friendship. with them. They have known each other since they were Spelman sisters 50 years ago. So they have a 50-year friendship, and they have continued on all these years, worked separately, worked together, always stood in support of one another. Actually, they have a podcast called Two Old Chicks Who Know a Lot of Shh. You know what SH stands for. So I'm really excited to talk to the two of them, to talk about the work that they've done individually and collectively, but just talk about long-term sisterhood and long-term friendship. So look forward to that next week on February 1st. And between now and then, I hope that all of you have a good week, that you take care of yourselves, that you find some moments to put yourself first, and that you continue to live well. See you soon. Bye-bye.